Take it away.
Thank you, Sivia, and thanks everybody for joining. We are glad you are here. We do these lunch and learns regularly where we dig into specific use cases with Fugue, whether that's getting full knowledge of your cloud environment, where you're vulnerable, where you're out of compliance, ways to prevent the kinds of resource misconfigurations that can give a hacker initial entry to your environment, and identifying the deeper architectural design flaws that could give a hacker API keys, access to your cloud control plane, and really maximize the damage of any individual incursion. Ways to put developers first with cloud security so they can design and deliver secure infrastructure environments faster, and how to do all of this with policy as code and automation so you can really scale your cloud security, operationalize it for efficiency, and essentially stop wasting engineers' time. So today we're going to dig into specifically a CI/CD use case of using Fugue to automate cloud security checks with Bitbucket. I think it's Terraform. Want to reiterate, we love these to be more interactive, so we don't like to wait until the end for Q&A. So at any point during this session, if you want to ask any questions or make any comments, please do that in chat. You're also welcome more anonymously if you like to pose any questions using the Q&A feature. All right, so let's dig in. CI/CD cloud security with Bitbucket and Fugue. We've got Aidan O'Connor, our senior solutions engineer, here to walk us through this use case. Hey, Aidan, how are you doing?
Hey, doing well, Drew. Thanks. How are you doing today?
I'm well. Hope everybody else out there as well as. And all right, let's jump in.
Awesome. Thanks, Drew, and thanks, Sivia. Again, welcome all. Thanks for joining today. I'm really excited to walk you through how you're going to integrate Fugue into Bitbucket Pipelines today. As Sivia and Drew said, please do interrupt with any questions you have. Those make for the best sessions. And finally, a big thank you to Drew and Sivia for getting this set up today and helping me here. Thanks, guys. Let's get into the agenda for the day. So first, I'm going to provide an overview of Fugue and today's use case. And next, we'll get into prerequisites for what you'll need to take this and go put it into action later on. Then we'll get into how you can configure your Bitbucket to enable you to put this in action as well. And then we'll get into the actual demonstration itself, where we're going to go over some vulnerabilities I've intentionally included in my Terraform. Then we'll kick off a build and we'll watch it fail. And we're going to see how the automation that Bitbucket Pipelines brings to you is going to stop the build with any misconfigurations. Then we'll go resolve those locally. We'll push back to the Bitbucket pipeline and have it run off a successful build, and then we'll leave a couple minutes for a Q&A, and then let you all go put this in action. All right, so getting into what is Fugue and how does it help you? So the ideal cloud security posture is automated, and it's constantly scanning your cloud runtime and your infrastructure as code. So we'll begin with the cloud runtime. So having views into all of your commercial cloud providers. So anything you have in the AWS cloud, your Azure subscriptions, Google Cloud projects is a good first step. It's not as automated as you'd like it to be. And people that are using, or hackers that are using automation tools to find any misconfigurations are going to pick up on that pretty easily. But having view into your runtime cloud, commercial cloud, what you're seeing on the right, is a good first step, and Fugue does that for you. So we give you that view into your commercial cloud. Next, Fugue provides you insight into the security status of your infrastructure as code templates. So Terraform, CloudFormation, Kubernetes manifests will give you insight into that. But as I'll show you today, automation, again, is what you really need to stop these hackers who are using automation. You have to fight automation with automation. And so what I'll show you today is the CI/CD pipeline and how you integrate Fugue into that. And keep in mind what I show you today is Bitbucket Pipeline specific, but the principles, not the specifics, apply to any other CI/CD pipeline. So we've got integrations with a lot of them: Circle CI, Jenkins, GitHub Actions, etc. Ask and we'll kind of walk you through how to do those integrations. And the way Fugue does all of this is with the unified policy engine. So if you use other tools to kind of piece together scanning your infrastructure as code, and then another tool to scan in deployment, and then another tool once your cloud resources in the runtime, what you'll find is that this is not smooth if you use multiple tools. There are crevices in this. So using Fugue with a single policy engine that applies the exact same rules through starting with your IaC through your CI/CD pipeline and in your cloud runtime is the best way to go about this and unique to Fugue. And then using the Fugue platform, you can view all of the results of this in a very centralized and user-friendly way, and I'll show you that as well. So getting into what you'll need to get started today is a Bitbucket account. And that can be either cloud or Bitbucket server, and you're going to want to enable pipelines. What you also need is cloud provider credentials loaded into Bitbucket. Today, I'm going to be using AWS, but you can use any cloud provider that Fugue supports. And then finally, a Bitbucket repository cloned locally containing cloud resources declared. For today, I'll do with Terraform, but again, Kubernetes manifests, cloud formation templates, etc. And then what you see on the right is how I've structured this. So what you'll see today is very simple. Understand that a lot of our users today probably have a lot more complex structures. So keep in mind that this is a simple example, but all of what I'm doing today will apply to your infrastructure. And now let's get into the demonstration. So looking on the left side, this is that same repository I was showing earlier. So let me just clear this. So you've got a very basic Terraform template here, kind of like what you saw in the terminal, the screenshot that I took. But you've got a main Terraform file. You've got Bitbucket Pipelines YAML file, and let's get into what both of those have. So I've got my provider information for Fugue, for Terraform, for AWS, and then you've got EC2 instance. I've got EC2 instance declared here, and I've got some purposeful misconfigurations within this instance. And so I'll show you how we correct those today. And what you'll also see is I've got some commented out code. I've got Fugue rules that I've violated and I've included here today. But it's very easy to go from finding out what's wrong to correcting it and to have this kind of code block. And I'll show you how we get that. And then I've got an IAM instance profile down on the bottom here that controls this EC2 instance. So next, let's get into the Bitbucket pipeline. So what you'll see up here is my Bitbucket pipeline. And so the pipeline is going to dictate, or this YAML file is going to dictate how you want Bitbucket pipelines to run. And so this is a series of wickets that your code's going to have to go through before you actually deploy to the cloud. You can configure Bitbucket pipelines in a number of different ways. But what I'm doing today is a 4-step sequential process. So first, I'm going to check and validate my Terraform. And then next, I'm going to scan the Terraform with Fugue. And that's going to be the IaC first. And then if it passes that wicket, then I'm going to deploy that secure Terraform. And then finally, I'm going to conduct a Fugue runtime scan. So I'm going to pull in the Fugue scanning client, and I'm going to execute this run, and we'll see the results of all of these scans appear in my Fugue platform. So let's get started. So best case circumstance, I run this locally by myself. So I execute regular run and I find what problems I have. And getting started with this is very easy. So I selected to run regular. it's very easy to go get this downloaded. So getting started, you have a couple different options. So you've got a homebrew local installation. You've got pre-built binaries for all your major platforms. You can get this from the Fugue releases page in our GitHub. And finally, the Docker image, which I'll actually be running today. So what you'll see in my Bitbucket pipeline YAML file is I call the Fugue regular image here. So you're able to run this in a number of different ways. So I have this run locally. I've added it via homebrew. And when I execute regular run, I'm able to see everything that's wrong in my environment, in my infrastructure as code, excuse me. And so that populates default a text output format. You have your choice of whether you want different input or output formats. So I can tell it to scan just a certain Terraform file or everything, just CloudFormation. But automatically, regular is going to go through from the root directory through all of the child directories, any infrastructure as code templates that it finds. It's going to scan against CIS benchmarks, which are included here. And I'll show you that. So these are already included with regular. And so it scans all of these hundreds of rules for any violations with any infrastructure as code that you have in your repository. So it outputs the Fugue rule ID. So I've got 2 Fugue rule IDs here. And just something to mention again, these are the same rule IDs if I was scanning in my runtime, and we'll see that. So Fugue rule 253, it applies the same as it would for infrastructure as code to an EC2 instance in the runtime. So you got a description of the rule, and then you've got the severity. And this severity is a high severity violation, and that's been set by CIS benchmarks. Next up, and I think this is probably the most helpful piece that anyone's going to find here today, is the Fugue rule documentation. So if I have no idea how to fix this Fugue rule violation, then I just click into the link that appears here, and I go check out the remediation steps. And so Fugue spoon feeds these remediation steps to you. We don't just point out what's wrong with your Terraform, we'll tell you how to fix it. And so that's also, again, for the runtime. So in the AWS console, this particular step or this particular rule, you're not able to fix via the console because it has to be established at initiation of the EC2 instance. You can fix it with the CLI, we give you that option. And then finally, Terraform code block that, as you saw earlier, and you'll see again, I copied and pasted into my code. So Fugue rule 253, we saw the remediation steps and the documentation, and then it'll tell you exactly where that occurs. So if I go into main.tf, I've got line 25, this resource here needs to go have Fugue rule 253 fixed within it. And the same goes for Fugue rule 271. So this is a medium violation. You've got, again, this main.tf line 25 with this application server, where to go fix this, and then also how to go fix it. So Fugue rule 271, you're going to get the same remediation steps. So I'm going to go correct one of these rules. And so I'm going to uncomment below. So I've got this instance profile that calls down to the instance profile I've created down here. I'll save. I'll run this again, and you'll find that there's just one problem. And so what you're all here for today is how do we automate this? So again, I've voluntarily executed regular locally just to save myself some time later once it's in the pipeline or once it's in a pull request. But we want to automate that. So I'm going to add this main and my updated Bitbucket Pipelines YAML file, and I'm going to commit. Let's say testing pipeline, and then I'm going to push it. And so what's going to happen on the right side of the screen is Bitbucket is going to pick up that I just pushed to my repository, and it's going to initiate that pipeline. So let's go see what happens. So all these steps that you saw, and what I'll pull up on the right while this loads up, these all run in their own separate Docker image. So there's going to be a little bit of build setup, and then once the step is done, there's going to be a little bit of build tear down, and we'll see that. So first step, checking formatting. I'll walk you through all of these steps and see what they look like here.
Hey, Aidan, we've got a question about
Yeah.
Rule 71. How do I know that? Where do those rules come from?
Yeah, so those rules are CIS benchmarks in this case. So Fugue is mapped, where applicable, all of the CIS benchmarks for any of these cloud providers to Fugue rules. And so some of these you'll find with the compliance families that Fugue provides outside of just the open source regular version. These are mapped to multiple compliance families. So one Fugue Rule 2, for example, IAM password policy should prevent reuse of previously used passwords. That's going to be applicable across many different compliance families. So that's where this Fugue rule comes from. Drew, did that answer the question, you think?
It did, thank you. And the other compliance families we're talking like SOC 2 and HIPAA, PCI, NIST, etc.
Yeah, and I'll show you. I'll show you in a minute. That's actually probably a good transition here. So what you're seeing with this line is it's more than just regular runs. So you saw me just run regular in my terminal here, but I've added a couple things. So let's break that down. So with this Fugue Docker image, I run regular on everything I have in this repository, and then the sync. So the sync is going to pull in more than just the CIS benchmarks. And so just something to note, this is available only for Fugue customers. So if you do just a regular run and use an open source version that's maintained by Fugue engineers, you're just going to have the CIS benchmarks available to you. But you can, within the Fugue UI, you can add different compliance families. So like you were saying, SOC 2, HIPAA, ISO, GDPR, et cetera. And so this will sync all of that rule bundle with the CIS rule bundle. And then when I add the upload flag, it's going to upload the results of this scan to the Fugue UI. So if you're a manager of a lot of developers, you can set up an organization where you can see the results of everyone's scans. And then finally, Severity String. This is probably a good time to address this. Look, today I'm standing up an EC2 instance and an IAM role. I can go fix these issues, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time, especially with this great documentation. But if you're trying to stand up a lot of cloud infrastructure and you don't want to have your build stopped because of a low severity violation, a medium severity violation, you can specify with Fugue a severity string. So you could say anything equal to or greater than a high severity violation, I don't want that to stop my build. That's not necessary. I'll go fix it later in the runtime. So something to note, and I'll show you how to do that. So this is actually a Bitbucket Pipelines repository variable. And so you can declare that here. So I can add S for severity, and then critical, and then it'll only stop the build if there's a critical violation. So I'm not going to do that though, because we're adhering to best practices today. We're going to go fix these violations. So let's go check out the pipeline again. So it stopped the build because I have that issue as we saw. Fugue rule, I believe it was 271 was the rule in question. So the first step of this pipeline, again, you have a little bit of build setup. It initializes Terraform, and then it checks the formatting of all of my Terraform just to make sure it's in accordance with HCL canonical standards. And then it validates my Terraform, so I'm not declaring anything that is incorrect, right? And so the reason I do this first, and this is obviously up to you, but the reason I chose to check the formatting and fix the formatting and validate my Terraform ahead of time is because Terraform may change a little bit. And so I want to do any changes that are going to happen before I scan my IaC for security and compliance violations. So I passed the first step, took 12 seconds, and let's get into the second step. So 16 seconds, you find what's wrong. So again, build setup, build teardown. It's you got a couple rule messages here. So let me see if I can condense this a little bit. I just have really big text on the screen. So I use regular run sync upload. And so it's going to check to see if I have a current rule bundle that has all of these additional rules that I've opted within the Fugue SaaS platform. It's going to request a rule bundle for this version of Regula. Any custom rules I have in my environment that would be declared in Rego, for those who are wondering, are going to be pulled in, and then it's going to wrap it up, and it's going to say, okay, so you have 200 additional Fugue rules and 0 custom rules for this environment. And again, this is a repository variable that I have for this environment. And so it's going to stop the build. So just like we saw, and I'll show you the other side of the screen. So when I voluntarily ran Regula on my infrastructure as code, Fugue rule 271, and you've got Fugue rule 271 that stopped the build right here. I'm trying to adjust these screens the best. So you're still going to get that documentation, that developer-friendly feedback. You're going to have that same Fugue rule in your, whether it's IaC, CI/CD pipeline, or in the runtime, the description, the violation level, and then the Fugue documentation, which you can go, again, open up, fix, rerun your pipeline, and then you're well on your way. You're moving fast but securely. And then finally, where the violation occurred. So let's take a minute and go fix this. So go back into my main Terraform file. Scroll back up. I'm going to make this false. So we don't want to associate a public IP address. But let's say you do want to associate one. Businesses stand up AWS EC2 instances all the time, and you want it to be publicly accessible. So Fugue also offers you the ability to waive rules. Outside of the scope of what we're going to talk today, but it's very easy to tell Fugue, for Fugue rule 271 and for this resource, AWS instance application server 126.22, don't enforce Fugue rule 271. So we make it very easy. And again, what you should be seeing and appreciating is that it's flexible. We're not forcing you into any which way to run Fugue. We adapt it to your needs. So I'm going to make this false because I don't want there to be a public IP association. Just for my own, yeah, so no problems found, and we'll engage that pipeline again. So I'm going to add main and commit and push. Go back to the pipelines and we'll see that there's one in progress. So that successful build is in progress. And it's going to start at the beginning again. And so while that runs, I'm going to point out one thing about this little button you see that says deploy. So when you're deploying cloud infrastructure via Bitbucket Pipelines, the way that you have to go about it is, so of course, call the proper image. So HashiCorp Terraform. You're going to have a manual trigger. So you're going to be able to, because obviously when you're running this directly from the command line, there's some interaction you have to do. So Bitbucket has included this to allow you to press a button, approve the deployment, and then move forward that way. So because it's a manual trigger, it's not even going to engage this step. You can do it. You can automatically deploy this as well. You have that option. So if I click deploy, it's going to ask me, okay, are you sure? So I have this scan I did and a deployment a couple hours ago. I'm going to add this build in. And so it's going to begin that third step. So it's going to check the Terraform state, as we all know. It's going to deploy an infrastructure that's changed, destroying it that needs to be destroyed. And then we'll get into that final step here in a minute. So again, because each of these are their own Docker images, you have to run Terraform init again. So Terraform init, it's been successfully initialized. I've got an error here for my application server IAM role. But the final step here would be scanning your runtime with Fugue. So even though my IAM my IAM instance role ran into an issue there, I believe because of the region I'm using, you're going to run this last step, and it's going to pull that Fugue CLI client from the latest pages, latest GitHub release. It's going to move it, modify it so that you can execute it, check the version just for the scan logs, being able to tell which version you're using, and then finally scan based on that runtime environment ID. And so that's included here. So this is my AWS runtime environment ID. So I've got two environment IDs. So then you get a refreshed understanding of your infrastructure as code security status, and then your runtime security status as well. And so when we run these checks, we can go see the status of these scans in this centralized location. So again, building automation in and giving your leadership visibility into the IaC that you're scanning, and then the runtime that you're scanning is going to all be centralized in this Fugue platform. So what you're seeing on the left, so I'm going to refresh this, but note the last scan was conducted 10:39. And then there's going to be another scan conducted, which was run in that second stage of this pipeline. And we see that here. So 12:26 p.m. Eastern. And you can actually see these interactive views of your infrastructure as code. So let me expand this so everyone can see this correctly. So again, it's a T2 micro instance. You've got this application server. You've got tags that were included as well. So we'll check that just to show you. So you've got the name of the server, the team is dev, and you've got that all included here. And so this is where you'd see if I did have anything wrong with this, you could see the issues here. And actually, let's go check that out. So going to make these corrections reversed, run regular locally, make sure I still have those two problems. I'm going to regular run, sync, upload, pull in that rules bundle, check if there's any custom rules in my environment, and then upload the results of that scan. And so this is very quick. It's going to refresh and then show me that I have those issues. So 12:30, again, the scan was just conducted, and you can see this. So I've got Fugue rule 271 and Fugue rule 253, and all of the compliance controls that are mapped to those different rules. And I'm able to go see what's wrong in my IaC templates. And if this were a bigger IaC structure, so if you had different modules and a base Terraform file, then you'd be able to see within those different files. But because today I just have the one, this is why you see just these little pod type visualizations. And then you see the AMI that I've called as well. Now let's say you want to see the results of all these scans in a centralized location. So you can go to your reports. We've got a great compliance posture dashboard. And you can actually filter this from this dashboard to say, just show me repository providers. I'm going to rerun this. And so what this provides you is you can have a structured setup of your tenants. You can have a lead tenant, let's say for your the manager of your DevOps team, and then all of your DevOps engineers who are deploying this cloud infrastructure to use their applications with are going to have the scans automatically go to this centralized area. So I can see, hey, we've got 6 critical issues here, got a bunch of high severity issues, and then medium. You can click into these and forward these to people and download them, tell them where to go fix these issues. So that about wraps it up. Of course, my intent today was to show you the IaC scanning. I'm not going to deploy this infrastructure. Let me see, Sivia, Drew, are there any questions I can answer from Q&A or the chat?
Yep, we got a few here in Q&A. that I was kind of holding because they weren't directly related to specifics that you were covering. So the first is we use GitHub Actions. Does it work the same way with GitHub Actions as it does with Bitbucket?
Yeah. So again, the principles are the same. You can call Fugue whether it's a Docker image. I believe it's the same for GitHub Actions, and then execute regular run. Ensure you have that variable included in GitHub, and pass the results up to your Fugue UI. So it does work the same. The specifics are not the same, but we do have an example of that. So I'll show you that. So if you go on regular.dev, integrations, so GitHub Actions, we've got a couple ways you can view this. So we've got a regular action repository and then a regular CI example README. So this will walk you through how to do that with the action example, and then here's the actual action itself. So there's some modifications you can make to it, but it'll scan everything. So all of
this, I think, is a good candidate for another lunch and learn, which I think
absolutely
you just enlisted yourself for, Aidan. So congratulations for that.
Sure.
So this one was focused on Terraform. What about organizations that have kind of are using different infrastructure as code tools, or maybe have a mix of tools? And there was a specific question about the policies you're showing. Can they be applied to different infrastructure as code tools?
Yeah. So let's go back to our documentation page. So again, this applies to CloudFormation, and that's JSON or YAML templates, Terraform HCL code like you saw today, and Terraform JSON plans, Kubernetes YAML manifests, and then in preview right now, Azure Resource Manager JSON templates. So these rules are going to apply to all those, and I'll show you those rules. So you can filter. So I'll go down to the Kubernetes rules, for example. So if you pass a Kubernetes manifest YAML file and you run regular on it, it's going to scan for all of these rules and then bring you to our rule documentation, tell you how to fix it. Yeah, I think that answers your question.
Yep. And what about in the runtime? So let's say a customer is kind of focused on tooling to help them secure infrastructure as code. Maybe they have a different CSPM tool in the runtime. You talk about Fugue's approach and our unified policy engine. Yeah,
sure. So everything you're seeing on the screen is our regular rules list. So this is all IaC, but these are all declared in Rego, which is the Open Policy Agent's policy as code language. And the way we've written these rules is they're applicable to both IaC, as we were looking at today, and then Cloud Runtime as well. And I'll show you that. So if I go to my runtime environment, I can show you that make sure this is blown up enough. I know it's a very big screen. So I can filter this by Fugue rules. So we'll go down to, let's use Fugue rule 271, which we've seen today. So we'll filter by that and show where those violations have occurred. So these are resources in the runtime. So if I open up my AWS management console right now in US East 1, you'd see all of these instances. And so this is Fugue rule 271 applied to those. Obviously among other rules, but you're able to see those in the runtime as well. So it's not just where other tools you might look at apply maybe different rules written in different languages for IaC, and then different rules in different languages for runtime. It's the same rule. And you can see that in our rules page as well. So we'll use 271 as the example here. So it's the same rule. There's no difference IaC to runtime in terms of the way we scan it. And then, like I said before, you got these compliance mappings for all the rules. So again, IaC and runtime, same rules.
So if a customer is currently using a solution to apply custom policy in their runtime, and they're interested in being able to kind of take those same policies and then apply them earlier in development with infrastructure as code checks. They can use Fugue for that as well.
Yep. So using Rego, you're able to declare all of those custom rules that you currently have that you're only using for runtime. You can scan your infrastructure as code as well, and that's something that we can help you with. So actually, what you'll see, and I've turned off all my custom rules for today just to keep it very simple. But we've got a number of custom rules. Tagging rules is a really big one. So people want tagging enforced, so you can declare those. So we can look at the rule definition here. So this is how we do it. This is a custom rule I came up with for tagging, and you declare it, and this will apply to both your runtime and your IaC resources.
Okay, and what kind of resources and documentation is available for people that need to write custom rules?
Yeah, so we've got a custom rule development page here within the Regula. So I'll drop this in the chat. So custom rule development, this was actually recently updated. It's a great walkthrough on custom rules. So whether they're simple and apply to one resource type and just allow or deny based on a part of the configuration, or complex or advanced, excuse me, and apply to multiple resource types and have kind of cascading hierarchical policies. This is where you'd go to learn how to do that. We've also come up with something called Frego, that's a Fugue Rego toolkit. It's going to help you test these, and so that's explained here as well. And then yeah, so there's a lot of documentation here on how to do that. And then our Fugue rules, our Fugue documentation page has some custom rule development as well. So a lot here to go for resources. So
yeah, I really love our documentation.
It's
Shout
so
out
good.
to Becky Lee,
Shout out to Becky Lee.
is responsible for all of that. That's great. We have a question here. We have a centralized governance team for cloud security policies. Can we dictate which policies the developers are using in their local scans?
Yeah, so that comes up a lot. That again, I can go voluntarily run this in my local IDE, but that's still me voluntarily running it. So you can also voluntarily waive rules, and also kind of try to sneak those into your pipeline to see if you can deploy them, because path of least resistance, you kind of have to assume that that's the way people are going to go. So the way we address that is configuration syncing. So when I say regular run sync, it's not just the custom rules that I have enabled, or all the compliance families and the rules, the custom rules I have in my environment, but also the way that the custom family, or the families that always must be run in my environment, are then pulled in. So you can go try to deselect these, but if your leadership in the Fugue hierarchical organization structure of your tenant has dictated that your certain family has to be enabled always, there's no way around it. That's the way you control it. Next, let me pull that up. So you can take a look at the families, and like we were talking about earlier, you've got all these different families, various amounts of recommendations. I've got a custom family here, but what I can do is I could say, if I'm a European company and I need to adhere to GDPR, I can go edit that family, make it always enabled if I'm the admin of the root tenant, and I can update that family. And now anyone in all of my subtenants, you can pick any other family you want. It's gonna run GDPR, and you must pass those GDPR checks to get to the cloud if you have that configured that way in your pipeline.
Awesome. We just got one more question I'll get to in a moment. If you have any questions, please get those in right now so we have time to address those. We do have this one. Is this example you walked through today available on the Fugue website? And will we have access to a link of this video? We will make this video available to everybody on demand. And I think you did a blog post on this example, right, Aidan?
I did, yeah. So we've got a public page. The pipeline that I ran today is a little bit different. Just I modified it, but I can update that here. And we've also got so we've got a tutorial on this. So in case you need more of a step-by-step walkthrough, I'm a learner that way. So you could just go through this. So all the prerequisites, what's in the repo, setting it up, going and fixing the issues, running it in the pipeline, and then any next steps you want to take. Yeah, we've got that. So I'll put this in the chat as well.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, thanks for doing that. I don't see any more questions. So this was Aidan O'Connor's first Lunch and Learn here at Fugue. I think everybody will agree you absolutely crushed it, Aidan. This was awesome. Everybody, please hit that raise hand button in your Zoom to give Aidan a high five. Want to kind of close this out with a couple things for you. First, you can get started with Fugue for free. Just go to fugue.co/free-trial to get going. In about 15 minutes, you'll have a full security and compliance assessment of your cloud environment across AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, including detailed information about any issues it finds, remediation guidance, as well as one of those interactive maps of your environment so you can kind of explore what you have running, how everything's related, where you have issues that need to be addressed. Also welcome you to schedule a one-on-one session with Aidan or Ricardo or other security or solutions engineers here to kind of dig into your specific use cases, security challenges, where you want to go and how Fugue can help you get there. Just go to fugue.co/get-a-demo. We also have a number of resources available to you. I've kind of put one up here. Last year, every year we do a big survey of cloud security practitioners to kind of get a handle on what they're experiencing. It's chock full of insights, kind of see where you stand with everybody else in the industry, and a lot of tips on how to improve your cloud security operation. Get that at fugue.co/report. And other than that, thank you, Aidan. Thank you, Sivia, and thanks everybody for joining us today. This was a ton of fun.
Thanks, Drew. Thanks, Sivia. Thanks everyone for joining, and I'll stick around for a couple minutes in case there are any more questions.
Awesome. I will too.